Hi everyone, I hope you're all okay and that you've had a lovely week. I hope you've managed to do some learning and that you've managed to do some exercise outside, your PE lessons in the garden. Hope you've managed to do some ICT lessons, watching films. ICT, going on computers, ICT. I hope you've managed to practice your times tables because you know that they are very important and that whatever year you are in, you will always use your times tables. So please, if anything, learn those times tables and do your reading. Anyway, I'm not going to talk much today. We're on page 170 in Beetle Boy. And we've just got to the part where Darkus goes to Novak Cutter's house. And Novak is convinced that Darkus fancies her. And Darkus is absolutely mortified. He does not fancy her at all. And he's like, no, I don't fancy you. Absolutely not. Where did you get that idea from? But Novak... Anyway, she's suddenly realised, and I think she's a little bit bitter that he doesn't fancy her. But anyway, that's by the way. So that's the part we got up to, so I'm going to start reading. Page 170. Darkus pivoted. He was in an oak-panelled library filled with leather-bound books and solid wooden furniture. An imposing portrait hung above the fireplace, a studded leather armchair beside it. On the mantelpiece was a lump of amber. At its heart was a beetle with horns. It looked like a miniature bull. Novak followed his eyes. That's Ornithophagus taurus. That's Ornithophagus taurus. A what? It's a species of dung beetle that can pull a load over 1,000 times its own body weight. Novak sounded bored. Which is like you pulling 6 London buses. It's the strongest insect in the world. He's magnificent, Darkus replied. It's a shame he's dead. Mater caught it in one of her beetle safaris in Africa. She had dipped it in resin and made it into a trophy. Who is Mater? Don't you go to school? Novak sneered. Mater is Latin for mother. Lucretia Clutter doesn't like to be referred to as mother unless it's in the Latin form. You don't call her Mom? No, Novak replied, making it clear that that was the end of the conversation. Darkus changed the subject. She goes on beetle safaris. He wondered if a beetle safari was like an insect hunt. Once a year, Novak said. She always comes back with a new species for her personal collection. Is that the one at the Natural History Museum? Darkus asked. Ha, no. She sponsors that one. She doesn't own it. As the sponsor, she can control who gets to see it and find out what their research is about. This is where she keeps her private collection. Who's that? Darkus pointed at the portrait. That is Sir Charles Darwin by Grayson and Grayson. It's made of a thorax and wing casings of scarab beetles. Novak sounded like she was reading from a textbook. In those drawers, she pointed to a deep cabinet that stretched along the only wall without books, is the Carson Coleoptera collection from 1903, containing beetles from East Asia. Darkus pulled one of the thin drawers open. Inside, hundreds of brightly coloured beetles were lined up next to one another. Each had a pin stuck through its right elytron, like the specimen trays in the museum. The carpet and curtains, Novak was relishing her TV voiceover persona and speaking in an exaggerated sing-song tone, are made from silkworms and stained red by the blood of a cochineal bug. Cochineal bug, which isn't a beetle, although many people think that it is. All of these names of beetles in this story are so hard to pronounce. I'm really sorry if you're screaming at me at home saying, no, it's not pronounced like that. I can imagine a couple of you from our class will be telling me that I've said it wrong, so I'm sorry if I'm saying them wrong. Darkus looked around. This room, with its heavy red curtains, brown leather armchairs, was grander than the room at the museum, but really it was the same. A room filled with dead beetles. Each leather-bound volume in this, the personal library of Lucretia Cutter. Novak was dancing around the room now. It's part of a rare scientific collection of books mapping the history of beetle evolution. So many dead beetles, Darkus said quietly. Yeah, it gives me the creeps, Novak said in her normal voice, but I would rather they were dead than alive. How can you say that? Darkus asked, surprised. Beetles are amazing. Novak screwed up her face. No, they are all creepy and crawly and gross. You aren't looking at them properly. I see quite enough of beetles every day, thank you very much. Dead ones. Of course dead ones, stupid, Novak sighed, exasperated. But I don't understand. Why'd you bring me here if you don't like it? Because all the rooms above this floor are out of bounds to visitors, and Mater is downstairs with guests. This was the only room I could use without her knowing. If she already has all these beetles, why does she want more? I don't know, Novak shrugged. Mater is a serious collector. She's obsessed. I have a lesson every day about insects. She says it's important for my future that I know all about them. That's how I know their Latin names. What's she going to do with my beetles? Is she going to stick pins in them and put them in drawers? Don't know. Probably, Novak gave a curt nod, unless it's for work. She's a beetle killer. You really are stupid, Novak giggled. Darkus smiled. Thanks. Mater owns Cutter Couture, you know, with the scarab logo. Darkus nodded. Bertolt told me about it. But what's fashion got to do with beetles? Who's Bertolt? My friend. Oh, Novak sniffed. Cutter Couture is the biggest fashion brand in the world. It makes designer clothes and things, and the secret ingredients of all Mater's products come from insects. But that's boring. The best bit is that she started putting her money into films. She's a movie producer now, and I'm going to be a huge movie star. I've already done my first film, and I've been nominated for an award. Really? Don't I look like a star? Novak turned away, looked over her shoulder and gave him a dazzling Hollywood smile. She held the well-practiced pose for an alarming length of time. I suppose. Darkus scratched his head and looked around the room. But I don't understand what this has got to do with my beetles. Who cares? Beetles are boring. Novak walked over to the window. Darkus is a good name for a lover. I don't suppose you're a stable boy. Stable boys always rescue fair maidens in the stories, and then they turn out to be the prince. No, I go to school, like all boys, Darkus snorted. Are you sure you don't want to kiss me? Novak said, hiding her face behind a curtain and peeping out. No. Not even just a little bit. Look, you're really nice and everything, but... Oh, you're so dull. Novak slapped her hands down on her dress in frustration. Why are you still here? Darkus persevered. Those weird men you saw, they're the ones with all the beetles in their house, and they've come here to sell insects to your mother. It must be an unusual infestation, Novak said, surprised. Mater's not in the pest control business. She visited them, Darkus said, the day you saw me in the window. I wondered why you were in that horrible street. And you dropped your card for me. You make it sound as if I were in love with you, Novak bristled. I'm not. I'm practicing being in love. There's a difference. She clenched her fists. It's important for my acting, and you don't even have the decency to play along. She stamped away and threw herself into the enormous armchair. You obviously don't think I'm a bit pretty, because all you want to talk about is icky bugs. Please don't get upset, Darkus approached her chair. I'm just looking for my dad. Well, I don't know where he is. The thing is, These beetles, I think they're somehow linked to my dad's disappearance. They're different from normal beetles and they're special, and that's why I want to protect them. One of them, Baxter, is my best friend. Your best friend is a beetle, Novak scoffed. Yes, would you like to meet him? Darkus knelt down at her feet, took off his backpack and pulled out Baxter's jam jar. It's alive! Novak shrank back into the chair. Oh no, I don't like it! Get it away from me! Darkus unscrewed the lid, putting Baxter on the flat of his hand. He's harmless. Baxter lifted his elytra and flew straight back into the jar. It flew, Novak said, amazed. I've never seen a beetle fly before. She leant forward. Usually he sits on my hand quite happily, Darkus said, puzzled. Perhaps he doesn't like me, Novak said mournfully. It's probably this room, Darkus said. Darkus looked around. It's full of dead beetles. You wouldn't like to be in a room of dead people, would you? Novak shook her head. It's all right, Baxter. Novak is a friend. Darkus turned the jar on its side and put his hand out. Baxter didn't move. Come out and say hello, and then you can go straight back into the jar and I'll put you safely away in my bag, I promise. Novak laughed as Darkus talked to the beetle, but stopped when Baxter walked forward and stepped onto his hand. Beetles can't understand humans, she said, astonished. That's right, Darkus said, bringing his hand before Novak. Ordinary beetles can't. But I told you, these aren't ordinary beetles. Darkus ran his finger over Baxter's glistening wing cases. Say hello to Baxter. Don't be silly. Pretend you're in a movie. And Baxter is a handsome soldier returning from battle. But he's a beetle, Novak was appalled. A big, spiky, gross one. Call yourself an actor? Novak pouted. All right, give me a moment. She sank back into the chair, closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Opening her eyes again, she sat up and, lowering her head and looking through fluttering eyelashes, said in an American accent, What a pleasure it is to make your acquaintance, Corporal Baxter. I have heard many great things about your bravery in battle. Baxter lowered his horn. He bowed! Novak looked at Darkus in surprise. He's returning your greeting, Darkus smiled. Will he fly for me, do you think? Novak asked, excited. I don't see why not, Darkus whispered to the beetle, waving his index finger in a pattern in the air. Baxter spread his wings and jumped into flight, making a noisy circuit of the room, the vibration of his wings throbbing like a distant engine. Novak laughed with delight. Can I touch him? I'm sure he won't mind, Darkus grinned as the beetle landed on his hand. Novak reached out and gave Baxter's thorax a gentle stroke before touching the tip of his horn. Ouch! It's like a needle, she exclaimed, holding out her hand in front of Darkus's. Can I hold him? Baxter was already crawling onto Novak's palm. I think he likes you. Really? Novak smiled at Darkus. Gosh, he's heavy, isn't he? Lifting his elytra, Baxter opened his flying wings and jumped into the air. He zoomed in a figure of 8 around Darkus and Novak, returning to her outstretched hand. He does like me, laughed Novak happily. Darkus held the jar on its side and Baxter crawled inside. So you see, my best friend is a beetle, he said, putting the jar into his rucksack. Now do you believe that I need your help? Yes, but I can't help you. I mean, what can I do? Do you know if your mother knows my dad? His name is Bartholomew Cuttle and he works at the Natural History Museum. I'm going to stop reading there. So we got up to page 178. I hope you enjoyed reading this part of the story. I'm still thoroughly enjoying it. It's such a brilliant book. I will do my best to post another one next week. I'll send you a link to the video. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you soon. Miss you all. Bye.